Welcome to Dorrs Down. Tense. Feeling or showing nervous tension, strain, or suspense. Or it can be a condition of your muscles. Or in a grammatical context, tense is a condition of verbs showing when the action took place, past, present, or future. Our podcast focuses on elements of time. Therefore, what we share today will mostly reflect this latter definition.
Inmates obsess over the past, present, and future. The past haunts them, the future taunts them, and the present confines them.
I would argue that therein lies the error because we have control over the present only. Obsessing over the past or the future is pointless. However, the past, present, and future is different than past tense, present tense, and future tense, which are simply grammatical conditions of verbs. So what are we discussing?
Well, tense. When writing my memoir, tense proved the most difficult thing of all. Because when I just simply talk about what happened to me in prison, I use the past tense because it was an experience I had and it's over. But readers want to be in the present. So you've got to turn the story around and tell it as if they're sitting right there being a part of it.
Right.
And that is so hard. And even clear up until the very end, we were still finding tense mistakes, So it just drove me crazy.
Yeah, I remember your publisher and your editors were always giving you a hard time about getting the editing right when it came to tense.
Yeah. But that kind of brings us into my headline story for today, which it isn't a case, but it's a project. And I found this book, Books Through Bars, which I just love. And you remember, Chris, when I was first in jail, I decided that I needed something to read, and we didn't have hardly any books in the jail, so I kind of started a book drive. But there is a huge need for books in jails and prisons. But jails is where the biggest need is because in prisons, they do have prison libraries and books come in. But it's difficult for inmates to get something to read. So I found that's what this entire book is about. And I wanted to share something that one inmate wrote. I want to tell you all thank you. Prison is 24 hours a day, and on most units, it's very real. But let me tell you what a book can do. I just finished reading a book that took me to a small town in Italy, a place I have never been and does not look like I will get to go. Oh, but I did get to go to that town, if only by words. Your volunteer-run organization put this in my hands. I can't tell you what these books do to us. They open our minds. And if only through our mind, we get to leave prison. Oh, yes. Good ending or bad, I'm still in prison. But you gave me a tool to dream, to learn to open my eyes and my mind. Too many times people look at us as mess up. That is a fact. Trust me, I live with my past, but I thank you all for seeing past that. To me and my fellow inmates, you are all very much appreciated. Keep up the good work. And then as I was reading further in, I found this Appalachian Prison Book Project, which just fascinated me. And they're only about 3.5 hours from here. I think I might go visit them. But Katie Ryan was an English professor at West Virginia University, and she taught a prison studies graduate course. Her graduate students read fictions, essays, memoirs, and poetry, and were inspired by the continuous mention of books as a source of power and freedom inside prisons. Katie told them about the lack of organizations that sent free books to people incarcerated in their region. And so the class wanted to do more than just lament these facts. Although none of them had volunteered at a prison book project before, they decided to start their own anyway. Even after the prison studies class ended and some students graduated, the effort continued. This program began because of a love of reading and the power and freedom it offers. And they get letters that remind them of this. I will be sharing this book with others as soon as I finish reading. I've had the book all of an hour now, and there is already a waiting list. From Paul. So far, the books you have sent have been very helpful. This one helped me obtain my GED. From Stephen. And Alexander wrote, It truly gladdens my heart to know that people like myself are not forgotten and that there are still organizations out there that think about us and care about our well-being. I just think that's such a beautiful thing, and I'd like to get more involved in that actually. I'm going to be checking it out.
So you were already involved because you booked drive or something while you were in prison?
While I was in jail.
While you were in jail.
I just wrote to everybody I knew, and lots of people would write to me because my case was in the headlines, and I'd answer everybody who wrote to me, and I'd say, send a book.
Jail is different than prison in what way?
Jail is different in prison. Jail is meant to be short term. So people go there while they're waiting trial. They're not sentenced yet.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's a shorter term facility, there's not a lot of programs and things inside there for the inmates. So it's truly just waiting.
How short term is it?
I think it has to be less than a year.
So a year is not short term.
A year's not short term, but it is.
When you're in prison, when you're in jail.
That's right.
Yeah. So either one, I think a year is a
prisons are meant for long term, and they have a lot of prisons have libraries and programs, but jails don't have anything.
Right. Interesting. Well, I have a few different things. So first, I think that there's no point in really focusing. We were talking about, if we step back, if we talk about present, past, and future, which is different than the tenses, present tense, past tense, and future tense. Those are two different things. If you put brackets around each one of those sets, those are two different things. But if we're talking about past, present, and future, then I think that there's really only one of those three that are important, and that is the present. It's the only one that we have control over.
You can make anything happen in.
You can't do anything about the past, and you really
you can
there's a little bit
for
of
the future.
You can prepare for the future. You can have an effect on the future, but you're not even guaranteed that that's going to be accurate. So you don't even know that. So maybe I think in some respect the future is. I think it's worthy of considering because it will help you to form what you're doing right now in the present.
Right.
And I think the past is important.
Working towards the future, so you may make decisions in the present that will affect your future.
Right. And the past is important because what you learn from the past affects what you're doing right now.
Right.
But ultimately, you can't go back in the past and change what you've done.
That's
so
true.
What you've already done is done. You can't, I think you mentioned that inmates sort of obsess over the past and the present and the future.
Yes.
They're really into this whole time thing.
Well, time is what they're doing, and time is all they've got, and time is the core of prison.
Yeah, and you're right. They have nothing else. Inmates don't have money. They don't have. There's no assets. There's no. The government, when they impose some sort of a punishment on an inmate, most of the time the only thing that they can take from them that will cause pain in their lives so that they can feel the anguish of punishment is to take time from them. True. So you put them in a jail and they've been removed from whatever their life would have been, and that's time. So they're giving time back, and that's a difficult thing. Now, having said all of that, there's still a lot of things that we need to cover. If we're going to go back to the grammatical part of this whole thing, I think that we should discuss some of the things that, well, I'll give you an example. This is one of my favorites, is George Washington, our first president.
Yeah.
He wrote a speech, but he did not actually provide the speech. He didn't actually speak it.
Oh, really?
He just wrote it.
Okay.
And they have a record of that written speech that he did not give.
Why didn't he give it?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think maybe he just didn't have the right time for it, or the audience maybe. I don't know what was missing. But anyway, I took the liberty of shortening this whole. He was really wordy, and he spent a lot of time putting in a lot of extra words that I thought we could really kind of pare this down. So I highlighted some things. I have to decline the office to which you have twice called me.
Oh.
And so basically what he was saying is that he's not going to run for president for a third time.
Mm-hmm.
And what I liked about this is that, number one, is when he was saying it, he was in the present tense.
Mm-hmm.
What he was saying is something that I have already decided, which is in the past tense.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided, that's
Mm-hmm.
past tense.
Right.
And the decision is something that he's making right now, and he's letting everybody know that this
Mm-hmm.
is his decision, and that's the present tense. And what he was referring to was his decision to not take a third term, which is in the future.
I see.
And I thought that was fascinating that you have these three things all together, all in one statement, that kind of expresses what the differences are between the past, present, and future
Mm-hmm.
tenses in a grammatical sense.
Mm-hmm.
Even the verbs that he used, like he used the word, some verbs in here. He used decline is a
Mm-hmm.
present tense verb,
Uh-huh.
and hoped is a past tense
Uh-huh.
verb, and that return to that retirement. So to return to, what he was referring
That's a
to
future.
is the future. Is
Right,
that sometime
right.
in the future he's going
Yes.
to
Mhm.
return to. So
Interesting.
I just think that's fascinating. That I think it's not just fascinating that it expresses those three grammatical terms, but it's also poignant what he referred to as his reasons for declining the
Mhm.
office for a third term. And the reasons were that he felt that the United States needed to continue to be a union. They wanted, he had a dream, a wish, a desire that America would stay as one country. And this is like in 1790 or
Right.
something. So it's
Mhm.
this is just after they first put things together. And he had no idea that, another 70 years later they'd have a civil war, and that another 150 years later they'd have civil rights issues and so on and so forth. He didn't even know that the country would still be together today,
Mhm.
which it
Mhm.
is.
Oh, yeah.
But he was expressing how important he felt that it was to follow the Constitution
Mm-hmm.
and to not have any rebellions against it.
Mm-hmm.
That people should stick with it.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
I think we've done that.
I think so.
So I think it's
Mhm.
brilliant that he was trying to inspire us to do that.
Okay.
And in
Cool.
today's political scheme of things, wow.
Yeah.
Holy crap, have we seen a lot of stuff
Yeah.
just in the last couple of weeks.
Well, yeah.
So personally, I'm in favor of the changes, and I think that
Personally, I'm not
yeah,
so much.
in the conversations that we've had, you're sort of on the other side of the aisle. We're okay with that, both
Yeah,
of us.
yeah.
Are we not?
Yeah.
You're okay with me,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
I'm okay with
yeah.
you. Okay. Let's
Yeah.
live under the same roof. So.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
Okay. Good. All right. All right. So there's more. I also, as we were going through the library researching some of the stuff for this episode, I found, now this doesn't necessarily, it sort of speaks to past, present, and future, but not so much directly. So maybe you have to read into this a little bit. So as I read into it.
Okay.
So this is Sidney Poitier, and he wrote The Measure of a Man,
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual autobiography. And it says here on page 47, this is his reference to what it takes for somebody to sort of grow up and grow into their own.
Oh, okay.
And the title of the chapter was The Time of Ashes. And I'm just going to read this one paragraph. Call it The Time of Ashes. In some African tribes, the young boys must cover their faces with ashes before their initiation into manhood. In certain Nordic cultures, the young boys used to sit down in the ashes by the fire in the center of the lodge house until they were ready to take on their adult role. And everybody knows about Cinderella, the girl who had to tend the cinders and do all the other lowly chores until her true identity became known.
Mm-hmm.
So I read this whole chapter here, and he goes into a lot of detail about all the things that happened when he was young. So he was a dishwasher. He was
Mm-hmm.
a young man. He was a teenager from the Bahamas, and he spoke a very broken English, and he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't read and he couldn't write, and there were a bunch of problems, and he was running into bad crowds, and he was living in Harlem, and he talks about how Harlem, New York, was filled with a whole lot of black people that were expected to stay in Harlem except for when the white people wanted them to come out and do their manual labor jobs.
Okay.
And then as soon as they were done with the manual labor jobs at the end of a workday, they were expected to go back to Harlem and stay there. You know,
Okay.
they didn't want to be seen. So they didn't mix those two people. So the fact that somebody like Sidney could go and develop himself and be bold enough and courageous enough to move forward in the time that he moved forward to become wealthy and educated and be an influence in movies and in art in such a way that he could make a difference in the world and then go on to write a book that is as poignant as this one.
Yeah.
Excellent
Pretty cool.
book. I'm so far I've been really impressed. I have a lot more to read, but it's pretty good. Now we have to sort of, what's our next step?
Felony murder.
Ah,
Our favorite part of the episode.
okay. Felony murder. I think I'm going to just jump right into this.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so
So
last week we talked about Casey Mitchell is back in the news.
No, Casey White.
I mean Casey White. Yeah,
You're reading
Casey
a
White.
paper written by the Mitchell Law School.
So Casey White is back in the news, and if anybody doesn't know, Casey White is an inmate, a very troubled man who had a relationship with Vicky White.
Yes,
and
not related, but
and
same last name.
They happen to have the same
In
last name.
Alabama. This was about 2 years ago this May. I think it'll be 2 years or might be 3 years now.
Vicky she was an officer of some sort, like a sheriff.
She was a deputy.
A deputy.
She was the assistant deputy.
And she'd been with the department for many, many years, and she had a lot of clout.
Jail. She was
everybody saw her
jail.
as being the authority there, and she had a relationship with one of the inmates and wound up in the middle, right under everybody else's noses. They planned an escape, and it was just this really strange thing where they just decided that they were going to walk out of the jail. Literally, they have him on videotape walking out of the jail, and he's not under any control, no handcuffs or anything else.
He was handcuffed when he left.
No, I don't think so.
Yes, he was.
He was?
Yes,
I don't
he
think
was.
so.
Yes, he was.
I don't think so. But even
No,
if he,
I know he was.
Even if he was.
They walked out. She was acting like she was going to take him to a medical visit. And so
But she was walking behind him.
Yes.
No. Was it behind? Yeah, she wasn't like in control of him, and she was supposed to be like walking beside him. There was protocol that she wasn't following.
That's right, but he was handcuffed.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll go back and watch the video.
Guarantee.
But anyway, the point is that they got chased down on the highway by a posse of
11 days after the escape.
A posse of law enforcement officers eventually forced them into a catastrophic rollover crash on the highway. And during the crash, there was the chaos of a crash, flipping the car around, rolling over multiple times out on the highway at speed, that ultimately Vicky White wind up sort of committing suicide, even if maybe it wasn't intentional. Nobody knows.
Well, we'll never know.
We'll never know the
answer.
There's no way to know that.
Right.
But she obviously had a gun. Both of them had guns, I would imagine. But she had a gun, and it was loaded and went off during the crash somehow.
And shot
herself in the head, whether it was intentional or otherwise.
Yeah.
Now, having said all of that, the Mitchell Hamlin Law Review, it has an article that's printed with their School of Law. This is an actual scholarly article, peer-reviewed article. And the title of this is "When We Need Someone to Blame, Officer Suicide, Justice, and the Felony Murder Rule in the Casey White Case."
Right, because they're now trying to charge Casey with Vicky White's suicide. as felony murder, which felony murder has never applied to suicide before.
But please understand that felony murder, the way that it is intended to be, is that if you're committing a felony,
Mm-hmm.
if you're committing a felony and somebody winds up dead, that within the felony murder rule, there's not much leeway. Somebody dies.
It has always excluded suicide, and it says that.
Sort of. Traditionally, yeah. I'm not sure that I really 100% agree. I think that that might be something that's true of some states and not others.
Well, we can look it up, but what I've read is that that's generally the case.
Either way, here's my take. My take is that it doesn't matter. I don't like Casey White. I don't like his character. I don't like the way he looks. I don't like the way he behaves. I don't like his attitude. I've seen him in videos. I just don't like the guy. But I feel very strongly that this has nothing to do with whether I like him or not.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really have anything to do with Casey White personally.
Right.
No more than it has anything to do with any one of the individuals that we've discussed in this podcast in the past concerning felony murder. That's not what this is about. It's about the principle of a nation that supports a policy that is archaic, that is fundamentally a violation of human rights. And that when people commit a crime, be punished for the crime that you committed, but no more. Don't be punished for the murder or death of somebody as a first-degree murder when all you've done is stolen a car or some other non-violent crime.
Loaned somebody your car keys.
Right. I mean, it's ridiculous how many people get caught up in this. Anyway, Casey White becomes important to me, not because I like Casey White or I think he should get off the hook or anything else. I think he should be punished and he should be put away forever. But what his case is doing is challenging the policy on a nationwide scale. And in the paper, I'm going to cut through 40 pages of what this whole document was about and get to the conclusion, which is always the sweetest part. So I'm going to just go ahead and read this. Casey White is not a fundamentally innocent person. Prior to his escape, he was awaiting trial for capital murder charges. He played a part in his own escape and had planned a previous escape. He even expressed that he wanted a shootout with police. However, none of that makes him culpable for Vicky White's suicide. For too long, the criminal justice system has allowed the felony murder rule to bind the crimes of others to a person permanently. In Casey's case, felony murder simply represented one more on a laundry list of charges. For others, it fundamentally changes the nature of their charges, and for far too many defendants end up in jail for life with no possibility of parole for non-violent participation in crimes. Once deprived of this easy out, states are free to adjust their other laws according to their definition of justice. Abolition of the felony murder rule entirely is the fairest option.
I agree.
One more time. Abolition of the felony murder rule entirely is the fairest option.
I agree. Yeah, I love it.
All right, now let's discuss that for just a second. Let's sort of break some of that down. I want to say it again. I've said it over and over again. This is not about Casey White. The reality is that this isn't even about all the rest of the American citizens that are doing life sentences or even worse. Some of them have death sentences for being hung up on felony murder, which is not them committing a murder at all. They don't even have to have a weapon. They don't have to pull a trigger. They don't have to do anything. They don't even have to have knowledge of what took place. They just have to be connected somehow to a felony while something just arbitrarily happens to somebody and they wind up dead. And I want the end of felony murder, not because of any of those, I can't call them innocent, but implicated American citizens that might wind up doing a life sentence for felony murder, but because the rest of us in this country This is a direct reflection of the character of our nation. That's what we need to get rid of, and why we need to get rid of felony murder.
I agree. Some technical issues here. I don't know if we've been recording or not, but we'll find out. We're getting close to the
Well,
end.
there's a number, there's 25.
I
up
know
there.
it's been recording video, but I don't know if it got the audio. So I don't know if I have to turn it on in here or not. So anyway, we'll find out. But
Okay. All right. So maybe I've been pontificating for no reason. All right. So what do you want to do? Do you want to move on?
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about Grace Behind Bars.
okay.
Honorable mention. We're not going to reference the book, but we've decided not to reference the book because we also have another media source that sort of covers the same story. So just to briefly discuss the story, is Grace Behind Bars is a story about, it's a book, and that's the title of the book, and it's a story about, his name is, well, their name is Bo and Gary Mitchell. So Bo was, what do you call him? Not a pastor, a chaplain for
The Denver Nuggets.
For the Denver Nuggets, for a big national sports team. So it was big, and he had a pretty prominent role with them. And he also helped some friends of his to acquire some money so that they could invest in some sort of a business deal that they wanted to do. And through the course of that, he went and signed paperwork, and he went to the bank, and he got a loan for $200,000. And he used that money by giving it to his friends so that they could invest in something that they felt was important. And it took 7 years for the FBI to catch up with him, unknowingly to him, that what he had done is considered a felony.
Mm.
And so he went and got an attorneys and thought this over very, very carefully, and after careful consideration decided that he would plead guilty, expecting that he would get probation. And the judge put him in prison for a year.
Wow.
And so now he's a federal felon.
Huh.
Like one other person I know.
Like one other person you know, huh?
Yep. So I just think that that's kind of an interesting thing. How that applies to all the rest of this is just another example of what I would call governmental overreach.
Mm-hmm.
That the authorities went too far by attacking this guy who is just a chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. I mean, how moral can you be?
Right.
Right?
Right. It's not like he's got, terrible motives.
Right. Yeah. His intentions were not evil intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd think that there'd be some opportunity for a judge to have the ability to just use his own judgment to say, this shouldn't even be here, and throw it out of court.
Right, I agree.
All right, so let's
time to draw a card from our basket.
Let's draw.
What are we gonna get?
Draw.
You need to hold that up so we can see it. Yeah. I can't see it. What have we got? Let me see.
What's it say?
It says it's upside down.
Oh, it's upside down.
Oh no, it's not. It's like reversed. Time.
The right time.
Patience. That's mine. I love that.
Patience.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about waiting.
Okay.
I just wrote a guided journal called The Weight of Waiting.
I have no idea. Have you ever met anybody that has patience?
You.
Have you ever met anybody that doesn't have patience?
Me.
Wow.
So this will be the Chris and Toby show.
Yeah, it most definitely will be. I'll tell you what, I do. I have a deep well of patience. I can put up with a lot of crap for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't get bent,
yeah,
generally speaking, except for when I'm playing chess. That's annoying.
Yeah, that is annoying. I agree.
All right. As always, our mission is to the end of felony murder. Time is inherently kin to any inmate, as most have only one resource left that the government can assume. Please understand this issue is catamount to the freedoms, significance, and life of all Americans. Do your part and go to our website where you can sign the petition to end felony murder. It is. Share your story with us. Hashtag 2DoorsTents. We'd love to hear it. Past, present, and future.
Which is your favorite?
Well, the only one that makes any sense at all is the present. Right now is the only thing that counts.
The only thing that matters.
Yeah.
I have a hard time staying in the present because I'm always thinking of the future and trying to get there.
Yeah,
so,
that is a mistake for everybody.
Yes,
That
I think a lot of people have that problem.
And I'm just going to sit back here in the present, and I am going to judge you for it.
Okay.
I'm going to be like, you're a bad girl.
Well, you won't be the first
You
person
should go
that
to prison.
judged me.
Oh,
Won't be the first person.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you've been judged, haven't you?
Many, many, many times.
Yeah, you've been judged to be inadequate.
Once again, last week, I got a social media comment.
Best place for you is in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was the best place for me.
At the time, that's where you needed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you were in prison, that was the present.
That's true.
When you were in prison.
That's true.
Today, it's just in the
now
past.
It's in the past.
You don't live in the past, do you?
No, I
No,
don't.
I think you're more of a future liver.
I am a future liver.
I'm a present liver.
Yes, you are.
Yep.
I'm going to learn to be a present liver.
Yep.
So subscribe on YouTube at Two Doors Down. For exclusive content, check out our Patreon channel. Our website is twodoorsdown.com. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.